I'm here with Benjamin Schraven and Niels Keijzer, two colleagues from the German Development Institute, and we will be talking about migration and the post-2015 agenda. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Benjamin, what linkages do you see between migration and sustainable development?
Well, the debate on the interlinkages between migration and development still very much focus on the meaning of international remittances. So it's a very functionalist kind of approach. But when we are talking about sustainable development, it also means that we need to take much stronger into consideration social aspects or environmental aspects. And here we see that, for instance, the living conditions and the legal status of many migrants are very harsh. And yet many countries, and in particular big immigration countries, still refuse to sign relevant international conventions that actually could improve the legal status and in the end also the living and working conditions of many migrants. Concerning environmental aspects, still migration in the context of climate change and environmental degradation is largely being portrayed just as a negative consequence. But if you're looking at the academic literature, we see that migration is increasingly being perceived as a potential adaptation strategy.
Okay. Niels, there is an ongoing discussion on whether and how migration can be part of the post-2015 agenda. What options do you see for integrating migration into the post-2015 agenda?
Well, to answer that question, we have to look at what we currently have, and that is the Millennium Development Goals. And it's clear that there's no mention whatsoever in the MDGs of migration. And there was a short reference in the Millennium Declaration that was the basis for these goals. But it's clear that they weren't included, and the main reason why that is the case is simply because it is a controversial topic. And what was in the MDGs is mainly where consensus was found between the UN member states. So that could even be a cause for being a bit negative about the post-2015 framework and think there's probably not going to be anything on migration there. But at the same time, we are now 14 years ahead in time. And also some things have changed. There's been more research done on the links between migration and development. And also it's clear also that because of the media and social media and all kinds of images now traveling across the world much faster than before, the negative consequences of today's migration policies are increasingly visible to all. And that means that also you could think of some options here in the current discussions. You could have a standalone goal on migration, among other standalone goals like water and energy. You could have a sub-objective on migration in several goals, so that you make sure that migration is not a standalone issue but is well integrated. And to take that even further, you could think of making migration some kind of enabling condition for development and recognizing it as such in the agreement. So these ideas are on the table, they are reflected in our institute's research. But at the same time, these negotiations are as political as they were 14 years ago. They've had about 10 meetings in New York to negotiate this framework since last year, and so far the issue hasn't been yet addressed that head on. So it's really the upcoming months that will show to what extent there is appetite for this in the international community.
Benjamin, you just mentioned it. Migration can be an adaptation strategy, but how exactly can that work in the framework of climate change?
Well, you know, many people, when it comes to the topic climate change and migration, still are afraid of massive forced mass migration, climate refugees. So people from affected areas who will try to reach Europe by millions and millions. But again, looking at the literature, we can see that it's mainly an issue of individual migrants who leave their families, who leave their households, usually for a limited period of time to work somewhere else, and send them remittances, which are in turn used by the families to cope with the adverse effects of climate change or environmental degradation. But furthermore, there are also other adaptive effects. For instance, the absence of a migrant also reduces the food pressure on the households which are affected by environmental stress. And there are, of course, also other forms of remittances. You could call them social remittances, like knowledge which is being transferred by the migrants to their families, to their relatives, which could be, for instance, a knowledge that is used for cultivation techniques that can generate an additional buffer to these mentioned adverse effects of environmental change.
Niels, what would be important steps to further promote migration on the international level, apart from the post-2015 agenda that we just talked about?
Well, I think there are a lot of things you can do to improve the current situation, even if there would not be a post-2015 agreement. And most of all, that is the things we can do here at home in the European Union. So just months after the Lampedusa incident last year, the European heads of states rejected suggestions from and proposals from the European Commission to improve the current situation by making it easier for migrants to legally migrate to Europe and come and work here. The current situation is mainly that it's only possible for highly educated migrants to come to Europe, and for other categories that is much more difficult, and they have to find all kinds of informal and different ways to make it to our borders. And as a result, Europe is spending billions of euros trying to protect their borders with computer systems and all kinds of supervisory actions. And that not only costs money, but it also creates the image in the European citizens' minds that these people who are trying to migrate to Europe and find a job here are somehow doing something wrong and illegal, which should not be the case. So what is needed in Europe is to have a better debate and a clearer kind of political direction that represents some kind of longer-term European vision on how we want to benefit from migration and how we want to manage migration. And now we are dealing with side effects and with images and things we don't want to see. So those are very important things, and also Europe's policies ultimately also create a credibility for when Europe engages in discussions in the UN and elsewhere on migration. So it's important to back up the words we want to promote in these debates.
Okay, Niels Keijzer, Benjamin Schraven, thanks so much for talking to me about post-2015 agenda and migration. And if you want to find out more about what we are doing on post-2015 and migration, please visit our website where we provide 2 specials on these issues. So thank you again, Benjamin and Niels.
Thank you. Thanks.